everyone. But you decided to watch my talk about beautiful reactive web UIs, Ruby, and you. I've created this talk for RailsConf 1, and the video was already published on YouTube just a few weeks ago. I've therefore decided to create an add-on talk. The original talk was more on the theory side of things. This one should be more practical. So expect some live coding in a few minutes. But let's cover the basics and jump right into the topic and review the state of UI development for Rails developers in 2021. From a Rails developer perspective, UI development approaches might be classified like this. On the y-axis, we start with zero UI to a beautiful reactive UI. And on the x-axis, we measure developer happiness, starting from low developer happiness, speaking of hustling with JavaScript and CSS, to high developer happiness caused by the beauty of Ruby. Implementing Ruby backend code is definitely a fun thing to do, but you don't get any UI out of it. Implementing Rails views like ERB or HAML, probably added with some JavaScript sprinkles, might give you a good-looking but often very static UI, with many full page reloads required. Additionally, you're definitely leaving your Ruby comfort zone here, jumping between Rails view files, CSS, and often widely distributed JavaScript snippets. Not too happy with that. And what about adding a second front-end application written in JavaScript? Have fun handling two states, server-side and client-side state, synced manually via an API, causing headaches due to managing complex data flow and constantly switching between two programming languages and system architectures. Well, luckily, last year brought us tools like Hotwire and Stimulus Reflex, shipping some kind of reactivity abstraction, helping you to avoid tons of JavaScript and use more Rails again. Great. But I'm still missing the developer happiness I experience when writing Ruby backend code. Things like object-oriented programming, class inheritance, modules, and simply a beautiful syntax leading to a readable and well-maintainable code base. Wouldn't it be cool to have all the benefits of Ruby while implementing beautiful reactive UIs? Well, that's at least what I thought. And by the way, if you end up down here, you're doing it wrong. So maybe I should introduce myself real quick. So hi, I'm Jonas. I'm a full-stack software developer working for various clients in Germany. And I'm a huge fan of Rails. I was always working in a context where a small team with limited time and budget resources wanted or needed to deliver a lot. And that's where Ruby itself and Rails fitted in perfectly. Empower a small team to deliver big things, right? And that's why I really wanted to get from here to here and created MateStack back in 2018. So say hello to MateStack. Based on a strong foundation, Rails with routing, controls, models, and so on, we want to create beautiful reactive web UIs. What do we need? Well, we somehow need HTML. We need some JavaScript, and finally, we need styling. Instead of writing HTML, we will create HTML structures with pure Ruby. Instead of writing JavaScript, we will compose pre-built reactive components in pure Ruby. And instead of writing CSS, we will compose pre-built styled components in pure Ruby. And that's all what MateStack is about. Now, it's time for some live coding. I'm going to switch the screen. So wait a second, need to set up here. Okay, editor's in place as well. Great. Okay, in this demo, we want to create a very simple Twitter timeline. We want to have a form on top and list the latest tweets below that form. Tweet should be likable using a click. I've created a Rails 6 app for that purpose, and I've used the Rails new command with Webpacker activated and scaffolded a post model and controller and views. And I've adjusted the scaffolded views a little bit in order to match the desired UI structure, because we want to have the form on top and the index below, and normally the scaffolded views are separate. So let's have a look how this is looking like. Going to the scaffolded posts route. And there you see the form on top and the likes, the tweets below. And this is my dummy thing. And just empty them now. Yeah, so you see this should be the fresh state, right? Okay, and well, I'm obviously able to post something. It's me, and the scaffolder allowed me to increase the likes counter directly, but obviously that should not be possible. But anyway, so we have something. It does not look good, but we have something. And now, as I said, the first building block of MateStack is creating UIs, HTML structures in pure Ruby. So we now want to start using pure Ruby in order to implement this HTML, because we want to get rid of ERB and HTML syntax, because we all love pure Ruby, right? So let's jump into the code. So we have our index HTML here. So we rendering the form and the list. And well, the list is just a table iterating on the posts. And I've adjusted the controller a little bit. So the index action is creating this post new because we're using the form on the index view now. And I've adjusted the form create response here a little bit in order to match the new UI structure. But that's straightforward Rails scaffolded controller and views. So now, in order to use MateStack UI core, well, we have to install it, right? So bundle add MateStack UI core. And we are just installing the Ruby gem, so we're not installing any JavaScript dependency for now. And I'm creating the folder structure for MateStack's components. Just gonna add a folder within the app folder, MateStack, components, posts. So we have the MateStack folder here. It's empty for now. And I'm gonna restart the server because I've installed a new gem and messed around with the folder structure just to be sure. Oops. Just start killing it and starting it again. And let's have a look if everything is still working. Okay, everything's still working as expected. Nothing changed. Now we start. Take this here, going to the view, to the index. And we want to get rid of this list partial and want to create this HTML structure in pure Ruby. And therefore, we create a MateStack component, which acts as a partial kind of. So I'm creating a new file. I'm calling it list RB. It's a plain Ruby file. And this is going to be a class matching the namespace of the folder structure, components, posts, list. And this is inheriting from MateStack UI component. And this class, as all classes, as all component classes of MateStack, has a response method. And this should return an HTML string at the end. So we start creating a pretty simple HTML for now, just like hello world. Save that. Just for testing purposes, we want to create this table in a bit. And now we somehow need to put this component into our Rails views, right? So we go back to our index, duplicate this line, and I'm just going to call the components, posts, list, and I'm going to use the call syntax here. We'll get rid of the list here under re-render. And there you go. So we only see a hello world, and that's the span with the content hello world. We don't see a table, obviously. And now it's time to recreate this table structure. So we go back to our component, and we could start going like table do, thead do, and whatever. But I don't want to waste your time, so I'm going to copy and paste this implementation. But I think you get the idea. We're just recreating the HTML structure using pure Ruby and Nest these Ruby method calls. And yeah, so let's save that. Well, we see context posts, so something's missing. We need to create a small API for this component. And so this component is now requiring posts, and it is accessing, it would access the injected posts using context dot. But now, if I reload the page, I'm getting a runtime error, and the component is complaining because it does not get the posts. Well, we should inject them. It's not complicated to do so. We go here and just go posts. Let's review that. There you go. We recreated the exact same table structure in pure Ruby. Might already be a bit more enjoyable to write, but the real power now is that we can refactor this implementation, but because this is deeply nested and we don't want to have this. So let's go ahead and create methods here, table heading partial, for example, and we take the table heading here, or we can get rid of it now, and I recreate this and go for table body partial, whatever you want to call it. Does not have to, the name partial doesn't have to be in there. I'm just using this naming schema for myself. So the table body partial should contain the table body thing. I used one thing too much here. So, and one step further, I'm going to create a post partial for each post, and this will take an argument now, and I'm going to extract the row here, and it just did the same mistake, but that doesn't matter. I see it here. So I'm calling it the post partial and passing in the post, and then I'm calling the table body partial up here and the table heading partial above that. So our main response method is now very readable, and we just separated this UI implementation in various chunks, helping us to create a much more readable and maintainable implementation. So let's see if we didn't mess up. Yeah, so it's still working exactly the same. We just refactored the code. And I really have to say that I love this fact about MateStack because it helps me to create complex UIs and keep my sanity while doing this. If I compare that to the time when I created complex ERB views and trying to structure that with partials and so on, like compared to this approach, I much prefer having a Ruby class, writing pure Ruby, and be able to like structure the implementation with Ruby instance methods. And on top of that, it's pure Ruby. You can use class inheritance. You could use shared modules and include them. You can use Ruby meta programming. You can do all kind of crazy stuff in order to compose your HTML structure. You're writing HTML kind of like HTML semantically at the end, in this stage of MateStack. But it's way easier to have this structure in pure Ruby. So this is one important building block of MateStack. The thing is, we don't want to have a table. Like we want to have maybe diffs listed below. So just get rid of the table. I just wanted to show you how to restructure implementations, and then just getting rid of that, I'm going to copy and paste slightly different implementation. So we're iterating over the posts, and for each post we're calling post partial and then a diff, and this is nonsense. So reload. Okay, now we have diffs. I'm going to post something again. It's again me. And I create this post. And so we have two divs listed here. And we still have the ability to destroy the post. Everything is working the same. And it just have a closer look. So we are using these link to Rails view helpers, where we just use a plane in front of them. So if you want to reuse the Rails view helpers, you just have to put plane in front. We probably will get rid of that in the future, but for now, just keep in mind to use plane in front of Rails view helpers. So no more HTML syntax, no more ERB syntax, easy to add to existing Rails views. As you saw, we're not breaking anything, we're just adding a new element to an existing Rails view structure. And it works with all kind of reactivity systems. So until this point, Matesec UI core doesn't have any opinion on reactivity. So you saw the using this approach here, like using this library of Rails to have some reactivity without JavaScript up and running, and so on. You can use Hotwire, you can use Stimulus Reflex, or whatever you want to use. And reactivity is a good keyword because we've talked about that we want to like a post using a click. And that should be like a click and without a full browser page reload afterwards, right? If you want to click on a button, you want to perform somehow a background AJAX request, and then you want to have a partial UI update, like incrementing the likes counter right away. And normally you would need JavaScript for all of that. But thanks to Matesec's built-in reactivity system, we don't have to implement this JavaScript ourselves. There's JavaScript running in the browser. Well, the maintainers and me personally, we've created this JavaScript, which will be shipped with Matesec UI core. But you don't have to write it. You just use it, and you will see how it's working. So let's add the JavaScript library of Matesec UI core, which is optional. But we do it now in order to demonstrate it. So we're adding add Matesec UI core. And because we're using this reactivity in context of a view which by default has activated turbulence in place, we need to add a second library because Matesec's reactivity system is based on Vue.js in the background, and Turbolinks and Vue.js, they have some issues when working together, but we can solve the issue simply by installing Vue Turbolinks library. It's a great thing. Yarn add Vue Turbolinks, and then we're good to go. So now we just need to add the one-time code snippet to the application.js. So we go to app JavaScript packs application.js, add this JavaScript below in order to start Matesec's built-in, or Matesec's Vue.js, Matesec's reactivity system based on Vue.js. And we see it's expecting an element Matesec UI in order to mount itself. So we're saving this and we're going to the application layout, and we're just adding a div with this ID. It's not allowed to do it on the body, unfortunately. Anyway, so div Matesec UI, and then closing this div. And now we should reload our page. Let's see. Okay, Matesec Webpack is compiling. It's taking a little bit, so now it's fast again. I look at the console. Let's see, you're running Vue in development mode. Great, so Vue is running. Yeah, and nothing changed until now. So the Matesec reactivity system is up and running, and we want to use it in order to like a post in a reactive manner. And well, we need a server side implementation in order to support this like, right? Because the like is a likes count in the database, and we need a controller action doing this, and we need a route. So typical Rails structure. So we are adding routes for the new like action we will add. Config routes. Just going to copy and paste this here. So resources just a little bit extended, like targeting posts like, just typical Rails stuff. And then I'm using a like action on the post controller. Just put it somewhere, maybe below the update. Damn it. Copy and pasting is hard sometimes. There you go. And well, we're using post instance variable, so we need to add this here in order to set post before. So we are just incrementing. Don't like the indentation here. So we are just incrementing and saving the likes counter. And well, in response, we're just saying, okay, it worked. Whatever. So typical Rails stuff. Saving this. So now the server side is up and running, or like set it up, and we just now need to use something out of Mate6 reactivity system in order to target this new like action on the server side. And we have a component called action for this scenario. So let's add the action component to our actions here. And it's pretty straightforward. So just calling a Ruby method action, and because we've set it inside Mate6 UI core, the action is now available here, and we're that's a configuration hash, and we're configuring this action component to like perform a background HTTP request against the like post path with a method HTTP method put. Let's see how this looks like. So it should be visualized with a string like via action. So the result is that we have just a link, and we could put a button or whatever, but now it's a string, and the action is a link tag. And well, if we click that, and nothing happens, so likes count is still 0. Let's reload manually. Okay, it worked, but so the background HTTP request was done, but the partial UI update is missing. And that's very easy to fix because we're using a second reactive component of Mate6 reactivity system, which is called async. And async is just responsible for re-rendering parts of the UI based on an event. See how that works. So we're taking, wait a second, again, a little bit of copy and pasting in order to speed up. So we want to re-render that list, and just do is like async. Again, we configure the async, and we are configuring the async to re-render on an event, which is called liked. Just a very simple use case, and we're just re-rendering the whole list here. Simple. So somehow we need to emit this event, right? So Mate6 reactivity system has a built-in event system, and where you can emit events and you can receive events. And async is awaiting an event, and the action actually should emit in a success case. So if the server responded positively with this, it should emit liked. Just as simple as that. That's it. Liked here, liked there. And let's see if this is working. We reload once, and then we click like, and we see how the likes count instantaneously is increased. And everything happened without a full browser page reload, which really speeds these things up. So background HTTP request, partial UI update, and everything without any custom JavaScript required. So we composed reactivity in pure Ruby using these pre-built components, which I was talking about in the intro. Well, want more of that? Hopefully, yes. Let's make the form submission reactive? Well, we're using classic form here, and we can do that. So hello again. It's nothing bad about using the form here like that. It's just performing a full browser page reload. In this case, it's fast because it's a slick page and it's my local host. But you can imagine in a bigger page and a network delay, this would not feel very reactive. So let's use a reactive form using a background HTTP request and perform a partial UI update again afterwards. And let's quickly create a new component. Go here, get rid of this form. Call it new. We inject the post coming from the control action. And we're going here, duplicating the file, call it new, and post new now, requiring just one post. And now we're just adding like the matesec form. I'm going to explain what we're seeing here in a bit, and the required form configuration helper over here. So matesec form again is just referencing the built-in reactive form component, and the form config, it's just returning a hash, but we want to keep it clean, so we're using a Ruby method here, returning this hash. So the form should be built for post, for this new post instance, using the HTTP method post towards this path, using the JSON format, and should emit an event, just like the action submitted an event. And we're collecting the body and the username using a text-hearing input and having a submit button. So as easy as that. Let's see what we have now. Okay, so we have a form, and I can post something here. Okay, nothing happened. Well, the form resetted itself. There was no full browser page reload involved. I know that's an indicator that the post submission was successful because then it's resetting itself if configured like that. But we don't see a partial UI update. And you might guess why. Because we're emitting an event called created. And we just have to adjust sync, which was reacting towards liked, just add the created here. Now let's see if this is working. So I've reloaded once, so we have our latest thing here. And then, yeah, EMEA on Rails, nice, whatever. And create the post. And I've clicked the post, and we immediately, the list was updated without a full browser page reload, and the form was submitted. So this is pretty great because no JavaScript at all was required for that. But I'm missing like my form validation messages probably because I didn't tell you that the post model requires the body and username using validations of active record. So we just need to adjust the response of the create action in an error trace a little bit in order to support matesec's form components. We're going to the create action. And this is the part which like the scaffolded response, and we're just adjusting this one and wrap it in a different structure. So now, going here, click on create post, I immediately see the can't be blank coming from the model without a full browser page reload, so pretty reactive. And if I go here and put something in, and the validation messages disappear. So that's a reactive element here on our UI. And yeah, so no JavaScript at all required to get these things going. And of course, you can style the errors, but we're skipping this for now. So we have a reactive form in place, updating list of posts and resetting itself. And all in all, we've implemented reactive likes, we've implemented reactive form submissions and reactive feedback, all in pure Ruby. And there's so much more to discover in matesec. So what about syncing multiple clients and push partial UI updates using action cable without any JavaScript? Well, MateSec has a component for this as well, but we're not showing this in this demo. We don't have enough time to do that. But if you need something what's not available in MateSec's reactivity system, go build it yourself. You can combine MateSec's HTML rendering, as I explained at the beginning, with all kinds of reactivity systems, or use the documented approach on how to create reactive components like a sync or action or MateSec form yourself. It's pretty much plain Vue.js and no dark magic. Well, for this talk, that should be enough for the build of the built-in reactivity system. Because we have a different issue. Our UI still doesn't look good. And the talk is about beautiful reactive UIs, right? So we should take care of the beauty, so to say. And now we're going to the third layer I've introduced in the small introduction, like composing pre-built styled components in pure Ruby. So MateSec UI core doesn't have an opinion on styling. It's just about functionality. You can use any CSS framework or your very own styling. I like Bootstrap, so let's install Bootstrap. I'm just doing this using the Yarn approach, Yarn add Bootstrap. And I'm going to set up the Webpacker approach on how to integrate Bootstrap. So creating creating a file, style, sheets, application, as CSS. In there, importing the freshly installed Bootstrap CSS side, at least. And in our Webpack application.js, I'm telling Webpacker to import our newly created application as CSS. Okay, and then finally, I'm just adding the style sheet pack tag to our application HTML. There it is. And now we're supporting style sheet pack and style sheet link tag. Okay, let's see what's going on. So Webpacker obviously will recompile now. Let's give it a few seconds. Come on, there you go. Okay, well, we see Bootstrap somehow kicking in, but it doesn't look good. Well, we need to apply Bootstrap styling, right? So, for example, you can go for, let's say, first of all, start using a container maybe. Oops, container. This is still HTML because it's a Rails view, so it's still HTML required. By the way, you could put all of this in a structure called MateSec page. I'm not covering this in this talk, but you can substitute a Rails view with a MateSec page and tell a controller action not to respond with a Rails view, but with a MateSec page. And then you don't need ERB at all or something like that. So you're directly in the MateSec world if you want. But you can use components on that level as well. Okay, but anyway, so we've used a div class container, so we should now have at least a little bit different UI. Okay, so I think you get the idea. You could go on now and create all the DOM structures required by Bootstrap and add all Bootstrap CSS classes in order to start your UI, and then have fun copy and pasting these DOM structures across your app, and maintain and iterate it, especially if you want to change something. So you have kind of established a design system which matches your application requirements, and then you want to change something, you have to go through all your implemented HTML and yeah, manually change the structures and CSS class change and whatever. And I don't like that. So let's install MateSec UI Bootstrap and see how it makes it way easier to work with a framework like Bootstrap. I'm going to install. So Matesec UI Bootstrap. Bootstrap. And this is the Ruby side, because yeah, we need the Ruby gem and we need the JavaScript side of Matesec UI Bootstrap. And finally, we're telling our application.js to import Matesec UI Bootstrap as well. And now, okay, this is installed. I'm restarting the server again because of installing a new gem, just to be on the safe side. So nothing really has changed from now, right? Okay, Webpacker is recompiling. Let's see what's happening. Yes, took 6 seconds. Okay, cool. Nothing changed, right? So we should use Matesec UI Bootstrap now. And Matesec UI Bootstrap ships pre-built side components. So you don't have to write these DOM structures required by Bootstrap or add these CSS classes required by Bootstrap. We have slick method names which are referencing these pre-built components, which are then rendering this DOM structure and taking in your injected options and whatever. And it's way easier to work with them. So let's see. We're going, well, let's start with this section here. Maybe we want to put a kind of a card around it with some shadow, whatever. And we're going to the new component. And we import Matesec UI Bootstrap registry because we're now using these add-on components, like indicated with BS _. BS section card, for example, is something I would like to use here. And I inject a property, title, what's going on. And then I just pass in my form. It's a block. So let's see if this is working. There you go. So I don't know if you can see it. I see a nice shadow and surrounded card with some padding. So, and the title's already in there, like a heading with margins. So everything's prepared for us. We don't have to take care of that. And I want to reuse this be a section card in for all posts, for example. So let's go to the list and go substitute this div with this be a section card and put the post username in the title like this. Get rid of that here. And of course, we need the registry here again, because we don't have an application component. So you could create an application component, base component for your application and include there, and then you would inherit from application component rather than from Matesec UI component directly. And then you don't have to take care of these includes every time. But anyway, so now let's see how the UI is looking like. Okay, so we have like all posts are like having this card now, and we're getting rid of this line. Okay, and we're getting rid of these headings. I don't like them. Okay, so finally, these form inputs, they need some love, and that's so easy to do. List and new. We're using BS form input and BS form submit. Let's see how this is. Okay, so now we have like the styled Bootstrap inputs and a style button, and if I click it, we have the style validation messages. It's all integrated in these pre-styled, pre-built style components. And we have something else where we don't see it, like we have a spinner here, right? So we telling the form to delay by purpose in order to visualize that something's going on here. And so this, I pretty much like that, and it's included already, so you don't have to take care of this. So these are all small details, and Matesec UI Bootstrap is growing towards like providing all these kind of UI elements and giving you a nice API. Of course, this can be configured, how the spinner looks like, and so on. I think you get the idea of like using pre-styled components. And to finalize this with the last section, we going to use the some buttons in order to oops. So we have a Bootstrap button for like the acting as a link towards the post path, and Bootstrap button acting as an action with this exact same configuration as before for the like. And let's see, reload the page. Okay, we have a show and the like here, and if I click the like, I'm still is working as expected. And yeah, so this is how you can use Matesec's pre-built reactive components coming out of Matesec UI Bootstrap. So I think we kind of fixed the styling of our dummy app in pure Ruby. And Matesec UI Bootstrap does not only offer all Bootstrap version 5 components, but also provides page layout components, like section card, for example, something like that, whole application templates with sidebar and whatever, and additionally smart card components helping you to build beautiful reactive application and admin UIs faster than ever before. So if you want to see how a whole application might look like built with Matesec UI Core and Matesec UI Bootstrap, of course, Bootstrap can be themed, right? So don't get afraid of that. So classic Bootstrap theming can be applied. So this is standard Bootstrap styling, and we're having our sidebar here, and something like a smart component, smart collection, like providing reactive filtering and reactive pagination. So we call this component smart collection, and only pure Ruby is required and some configuration within Ruby in order to set the smart collection up. And it's reactive and it's looking good, and it's just a few lines of Ruby to get there. If you're curious how this is working, you can go to dummy.matesec.io and you can watch this code display here. And you can also go to Matesec UI Bootstrap GitHub repository, and within the spec dummy folder, you will see the code, the source code of this whole application, and can, yeah, just watch how these things are implemented. Okay, so I want to wrap it up now. Let's do this. Once again, presentation mode, just a few more slides and then we're done. So wrapping it up now, we've managed to skip writing HTML and enjoy implementing HTML structures in pure Ruby instead. My taste, there you go. Okay, and we've managed to skip writing JavaScript and enjoy implementing reactivity in pure Ruby instead, easily extendable with Vue.js or whatever you want to use if required. And we've managed to skip writing giant DOM structures and CSS CSS class chains across all our apps, and enjoy composing styled components in pure Ruby instead. The first two layers are shipped within the open source gem Matesec UI Core, and the pre-built style components are shipped within the open source gem Matesec UI Bootstrap. Both available on Ruby Gems and GitHub. And if you're not into Bootstrap, why not creating a gem for your custom design system, which can be used in all your apps? Either way, I hope Matesec will help you escape the front-end hustle. So thanks for listening. Get in touch, give the Matesec UI Core, Matesec UI Bootstrap a star on GitHub. I really appreciate that. I'm happy about every star for the projects. And jump on our Discord server if you want to get started and watch our documentation. So thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. The EMEA on Rails is now officially over. You ended with a bang. Awesome. And now it's time for just like gathering and hanging out until whenever people will like. You can, I think, go into the main stage area for that, where people can hang out. And really just thank you so much, Jonas, for this talk. And thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I would be available for questions, but I don't know, like if you want to go for like the other rooms, go for it and leave. But you could, like, as you wish.
Totally. Questions, if you're up to it, questions are 100% a good use of time.
Silence. But that's okay. What about specs?
Liron Hakohen asked about.
Yeah. So what about specs? Yeah, we actually have documentation on that. So you can, like, depending on what testing approach you prefer, but we're using RSpec and Capybara in combination in order to test our UIs. And actually, it's pretty much straightforward RSpec and Capybara. So no mate stack specifics there. But you could use, you could unit test components in isolation. They're just returning without any context around them, returning an HTML string, and you could expect something in the string, so you don't need the Capybara overhead. But yeah, we have a small documentation towards RSpec Capybara, and we want to add more like best practices in how to test UIs and the reactivity and what you have to be careful about. But that's actually general Capybara things. And RSpec, of course. Or Minitest, like MateSec has an opinion on testing as well.
We love testing. Any other questions, my friends? If not, I'm sure you can be found on the interwebs. Thank you again.